All right, everybody, we are going live.
So glad I was. I read the account in the newspaper.
How are you?
That cable thing seems like it's.
I'm everywhere. I'm not even.
I'm trying to get Andrea to go.
When I came back.
The irony that there were people trying to vote.
I'm up there.
Yeah.
Good morning, I'm right behind.
Oh, that's right.
With these two. Right. No contact. No telephone stuff.
How'd they work? Yeah?
Oh, kind of.
Like kids are really gonna say, well, I'm really going, I hear you know. I'm actually gonna wait till that's done.
You mean the bikini pictures? You were so fast. That was awesome.
There is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm checking in on my 15-year-old.
Cheryl, how's everything?
I apologize. How are you?
Yeah, my daughter.
Hard to believe. Already that far along. And you pronounce your name?
Eleni.
Elena.
Well, how you doing?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order and welcome you to the Hinton-Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. It is 6:32 p.m. I see that David Sanders from Wilbraham Public Access is recording this meeting. Is there anyone else here recording? We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Bill Bontempi. Cheryl Caruana. Here. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray. Here. Rich Redeker. Mike Chervazzi. Here. Michelle Boudreaux. Aye, here. If you would please stand, Mike will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Okay. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will begin with our student rep update, Elena Bergeron. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Bergeron. Recently we had homecoming and Spirit Week. It turned out to be very, very successful. I had a ton of fun myself, and although it was raining and freezing, we did get to move it inside, which was a change, but it happened to be a change for the better, and a lot of students did like it more outside than in the courtyard, which was surprising for some administrators that I got to speak to, but it was definitely for the better, and now we know that the popular vote is for it to be in the gym. So it was a ton of fun, and the DJ was great. Recently, our student council did a Dress for a Cause, which is when student council representatives come in and collect money for a cause. This month's cause, for October, was anti-bullying, and they wore blue and collected money at the student entrances. ATI Club recently did a Good to Go drive for the Mental Health Association. They collected things like toiletries and, toothpaste, all that good stuff for that association, and all of it was donated. Western Massachusetts champions girls field hockey recently won. They were very excited to do that, and Minnetonka was greatly represented by the girls field hockey for Western Massachusetts. We have a few more things coming up, although the majority of stuff is in the fall. There are a few more things. Western Massachusetts Association of Student Council Conference is not next week, but the week after. There is when all student councils in Western Massachusetts will meet at Long Meadow High School during the day. We will do things like workshops and get to meet a lot of new people. Student Council also has what's called lock-in that week, and if you don't know what lock-in is when Student Council comes into Minnetonka after hours. We do fun games and basically just bond the whole night, and it's a great way to make new friends and make new memories. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Elena?
No, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. We are going to move on to the Booster Club update, and I will pass that to John.
Thank you. Sort of continuing along with the long list of victories that we can report for the high school, we have every single one of our fall sports teams going into the postseason, which is why Steve Berndrat isn't here to give this, so I will speak on his behalf, discussing the update on the status of the Booster Club. So, I'd like to thank Mr. DeCorzio for his commitment and dedication to the Minnetonka Booster Club and Minnetonka Athletics over his time spent as Booster Club president. Graciously assisted in the transition this fall with keeping concessions running smoothly at all the home football games. This weekend, Mr. DeCorzio will be meeting with Mr. Pete Dufresne as he signs over leadership of the club to Mr. Dufresne. Once this is complete, we'll be holding a public forum to appoint new board members of the Booster Club sometime next week. So please be on the lookout for an evening meeting either Wednesday, November 8th or Thursday, November 9th, with a time and location to be set. Once again, Minnetonka Athletics would like to thank Mr. DeCorzio and Mr. Flynn for their tireless work and commitment for the betterment of the athletics program. And once again, we want to wish all of our fall student athletes best of luck in the tournaments.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
No, that's great news. Thank you to Mr. Dufresne and for everyone who served on that committee in the past. Thank you.
My only question is, do you know how people will be notified of the meeting? Will it be posted somewhere? Will there be a message sent out to the district?
I do not know, but I can follow up with Mr. Berndrat on that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Do we have any spot for the Booster Club and other clubs on our website?
We currently do not have the Booster Club on our website. I do believe we have some links to like the general student organizations, but that certainly is something, and the website is expandable. If that's something that the new president and the leadership wants to do, he's happy to collaborate with them.
Thank you. We'll move on to the transportation update.
Oh, sorry. So we have all we have is a memo that we've just received from Lower Pioneer Valley, so I'm sorry if it's a little choppy. So the Lower Pioneer Valley Collaborative is writing to inform you all that we are diligently working on improving our bus arrival and dismissal times to pick up and drop off students from their respective district schools. We understand that the current situation is causing inconvenience and frustration for many of you, and we sincerely appreciate your patience and cooperation. Some reasons for the delays in transportation service are not having full complement of drivers, even with our continued robust efforts in advertisement and recruitment, coupled with the fact that we have recently had a significant number of drivers out sick. Not having a full complement of drivers exacerbates the delayed transportation issues in your districts when we have scheduled drivers out sick for days at a time. We are constantly trying to find creative and innovative ways of recruiting drivers so that we are operating at full capacity so that we are able to provide students with the quality transportation services to and from school. Recently, with an uncommon amount of drivers out sick at the same time, we have been actively working to find the best solutions to minimize the impact of lack of drivers and absent sick drivers on your children's transportation. Some of the steps we are taking to improve transportation services are: 1, monitoring the bus arrival and dismissal times daily and making necessary changes as needed. 2, offering current LPVEC employees a $200 bonus for each individual that they recommend for a bus driver position that are hired and stay working for at least a year as a LPVEC bus driver. With the shortage of drivers overall and more now due to illness, the transportation manager, the assistant transportation manager, managers, and supervisors are driving the buses to assist with students getting to and from their specific schools in a safe, orderly, and timely manner. Below are other things that the Lower Pioneer Valley Education Collaborative has done to address its current transportation issues, along with answering some pertinent questions about this important matter. 1, what are some things we have done as an organization to recruit drivers and monitors? LPVEC has expanded its advertising to include television, radio, billboards, social media, member district websites, and updated business cards for management to distribute at all possible opportunities. LPVEC has spent approximately $62,000 on advertising and recruitment since the beginning of last school year. The most successful advertisement thus far has been word of mouth and mass hire. You can see they've included some recruiting flyers. Those will be in your packets, and I'm sure we'll add this to the website. In an effort to recruit additional drivers to fulfill vacancies, LPVEC entered into multiple contracts for various recruiting campaigns. LPVEC entered into a billboard campaign where billboards were placed in various communities through Lamar Advertising Company of Connecticut and Western Massachusetts. Below is a copy of the ad, so in your packet you have the ad. LPVEC entered into a radio campaign through iHeartRadio. The campaign is running on 3 radio channels below. I can't quite read what those are, but they're there in the packet. LPVEC entered into a newspaper print campaign with Turley Publications. The ad is published in the Agawam Advertiser, the Chicopee Register, the Register, and the Wilbraham Hamden Times. That is also, an image of that is also shared here. The transportation management staff have social media advertisements on their personal pages. LPVEC employees are incentivized if they recruit friends or family to work for LPVEC as a driver. Recruit employees must maintain their employment for 1 year before the incentive is paid. That's the $200 that was mentioned above. In addition, the LPVEC transportation recruiting flyer was shared with our member school districts. Last year, LPVEC entered into a contract for television advertising with WGGB-TV. Unfortunately, the campaign was unsuccessful, therefore we did not include the television advertising in this effort. 2, specifically for Hamden-Wilbraham Public Schools, how did they go from 33 RNT drivers to 20 and 11.3 SNT drivers to 10.5? I'm not 100% sure what. I believe that's regular transportation and special ed transportation. This deficit occurred primarily during the pandemic, and we as an organization have not been able to recover yet. 3, why have we as an organization lost the drivers we had in the pipeline at the beginning of the school year? 20, I think, in training across all garages. The Hamden-Wilbraham Ludlow Garage has received 5 new drivers so far this year. In addition, LPVEC currently has 9 drivers in the driver training program, and of these 9, it appears at least 5 of them are slated to go to the Hamden-Wilbraham Ludlow Garage as the completion of training. Lastly, of the 20 applicants that the LPVEC had in August of 2023, 5 went to the Hamden-Wilbraham Public Schools, 2 to Southwick Toll and Granville, 4 to East Long Meadow, 4 to Agawam, and the rest did not complete the training for various reasons. What are some of the reasons that we as an organization are down so many drivers at this time? If you watch the news or read any school bus industry literature, the shortage of bus drivers is a national issue, and most towns and cities across the country are facing the same struggles. The training and requirements to obtain a CDL license are constantly increasing and making it seem like a daunting task to some prospective applicants. For example, the decriminalization of marijuana in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has not helped the bus industry because we have had quite a few applicants who have openly admitted in the interview process that they use marijuana on a regular basis, which automatically eliminates them under federal legislation from the Department of Transportation as possible trainees. Furthermore, we are also seeing a much higher number of terminations for failed random drug tests due to marijuana use. Lastly, as it stands right now, we believe that companies within the private sector are more able to adapt to a changing workplace and create monetary incentives that we are not limited by a nonprofit structure or a binding union contract that enable them to initiate incentives that work within a contract or by submitting addendums that allow for a more diverse program. 5. What are we doing as an organization to combat the lack of drivers impacting the quality of transportation services to our member districts? In other words, how are we compensating for the lack of drivers and preventing this issue from impacting our delivery of transportation services to our constituents? So what creative things are we doing to keep our arrival and dismissal times close to their designated times, along with preventing any other disruption in service? Most important, to offset the shortage of drivers, the LPVEC is working on the scheduled day and the day out to get the best possible results from the drivers that we have available. Next, the transportation manager, the assistant transportation manager, managers and supervisors are driving the buses to assist with students getting to and from their specific schools in a safe, orderly, and timely manner. Furthermore, the open routes that are covered on a daily basis are then broken into pieces and divided up to the helpful drivers that volunteer or ask to pitch in, depending on the circumstance, along with a handful of substitute drivers that come in for various shifts according to their availability. We then look at who is on the calendar scheduled to be out for a shift, and we contemplate how those routes will be covered. Once a plan has been established, we notify the districts to inform the schools and the parents, guardians, and caregivers. On the best day, the plan goes off without a hitch. On not so good days, we hit some bumps in the road, adjust as we go, and do our best to inform the districts as quickly and completely as possible. This task is endless and is always changing depending on the routes we are covering. Lastly, this is the process each and every day to provide the best possible transportation services for you and your students without 1/3 of the needed fleet. Once again, the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative apologizes for any inconvenience that these transportation delays are causing in our member districts. However, please know that we as an organization are constantly strategizing and working to remedy these issues and are very hopeful that the transportation services will be better in the near future. Thank you for your patience, understanding, and support during these disruptive times. Sincerely, Alvin W. Morton, Executive Director, LPVEC. That's it.
Actually, I have a question on there. It seems to me in part 4 or number 4, what are some of the reasons that we are, as an organization, are down to so many drivers at this time? It seems that they are limited because of nonprofit structure and a binding union contract. Are unions against paying drivers more? Is that what they're trying to say here? That they're not able to pay drivers more because of union contracts?
I could only speculate at best.
I may be able to speak to that one. I know that there are some agencies that are not within the structure of a collaborative, which is considered like a district by the state, where drivers are being guaranteed a certain number, pay for a certain number of hours, whether or not they actually drive. And I think the collaborative feels that that might not be permissible under their fiscal oversight.
So can I have a letter from their attorney that says that that's true? I'd like to see that, because if they're saying right here, what they're admitting here is that their contract that they're offering their drivers aren't as good as they can get in the private sector. And why, that's probably why we're having these issues, right? I guess I'm asking no one. but I would like an answer to that. Can we get someone from the Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative? Maybe this, the new, what is his name? Yeah, if we can get Alvin W. Morton Jr. to come down here and speak to this. I'm surprised he's actually not here right now. It's a very nice letter, but I don't think it answers any of the questions that we really asked. And we still have this problem. We have no time frame, we have no end in sight, and we have parents that are really frustrated about this because they have jobs and they have to coordinate this.
I had invited any member of the collaborative to come down tonight to speak to that. And I will certainly extend the offer to continue the conversation at the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Maybe send that as an email and CC all of us, so when they say no, they can CC all of us and we can respond to them.
Be happy to do that.
Thank you, John.
I have a question. We all, I think on the committee, got letters from people about this. And one of the things, and I'm glad we had a really thorough report. Thank you. But I'm glad that there are a lot of principals here, because I would like to have them brainstorm at an appropriate time how to get those kids who come late on a regular basis into their breakfast and into this, if you have any kind of clubs or, you know, musical instrument instruction, using the gym. Those kids are being denied that, and it's really public education.
And who's the head of the union that they're talking about that's limiting their driver's pay? I'd like to have them come in here and let us know what's going on too. If that's legal, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure who the head of the union is, but we can extend the invitation to that person as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We will move on to the superintendent's update.
Michelle, I wanted to know, I do have Jake Halsburn and Katie Gainwell on speakers while they're watching the video, in case anyone has any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so before beginning the accountability report, let me briefly give the November 1st enrollment, which stands at 2,842. That's down 4 from September 1st. As you can see, that's a net of small increases and small decreases that we've seen at different grades across the district, which seems to reflect normal residency changes that occur during the course of the year rather than any kind of a discernible pattern. And so then I'll move on to the accountability report. This is a time for us to be responsible as a school community, both for the impacts that we would like to have and the impacts that we've actually had during the past school year. As you'll hear, we have data showing that we have had some positive impacts in a lot of areas and accomplished some of what we hope to do. And I'll point out causes for celebration as we go along. We also have data showing that we have some areas we have not yet had the kind of impact we'd like to have, and I'll point those out to you as well. And once again, I'll begin with our teacher quality data because hiring and retaining effective teachers is one of the most reliable means of improving student achievement. As a reminder, these results are reported in learning experience. A learning experience is a student class unit. So an elementary classroom teacher may have 20 to 25 associated learning experiences, but a PE teacher who works with every student in the building would be responsible for several hundred learning experiences. A content specialist in middle or high school might be responsible for between 100 and 150 learning experiences over the course of the year, which is just to say that some teachers account for more learning experiences than others, so it's important to bear that in mind when you interpret these results. These results are very similar to last year's. As compared to statewide averages, teachers in our district are more experienced, less likely to be teaching out of field, and less likely to be judged in need of improvement or unsatisfactory by their supervisors. Next, we'll go on to teacher FTEs per 100 students. This slide is also similar to what we saw last year. We continue to have a lower than average number of general education teachers and a higher than average number of special education teachers as compared to the state on an equalized per 100 student basis. And then we also look at the experience of teachers and teaching out of gap by student experiences to see if there's any inequity and how teachers are being assigned or how students are being assigned to teachers. Based on this information, we're doing a good job of making sure that students from all groups have access to experienced teachers. However, low-income students and students of color are about twice as likely to be assigned to a teacher who is teaching out of field as compared to non-low-income students or white students. As you recall from the previous slide, this is a small percentage of sections taught by someone working out of field. In fact, there are only 13 sections across the district that are considered to be working out of field by DESE. I have to say we disagree with DESE on one of those sections, and it appears that 5 of those sections were miscoded, resulted in them being incorrectly identified as being taught by an out-of-field teacher. So that leaves 7 sections out of the hundreds that are offered by the district that were taught by someone out of field. Yet, low-income students and students of color were twice as likely to be scheduled into those sections for reasons we can't quite figure out. It's important to note that students are randomly assigned to courses, taking into account their course selections at the high school. So this is not the result of any kind of deliberate actions. The sections are very sort of standard generic courses that everybody takes. So it's something that we want to try to improve on as we continue to work on creating equitable experiences for all of our students. So next, we'll move on to student views of climate and learning. As this cross-section of data from California schools shows, schools with more positive school climate have higher average test scores than schools with a less positive climate. Of course, higher test scores is not the only reason why we want to have a better climate, but it is an additional reason to consider climate as a very important variable in trying to make the learning experience as effective as possible for all students. So these results continue a trend we saw last year with the lowest perceptions of school climate occurring in grade 8, where student perceptions of climate showed a small but significant negative difference from the state average. This is the dimension of the vocal survey that includes students' items such as I have been called names or made fun of by students more than once in the school. I have been called names or made, or I've heard other students be called names or made fun of more than once in the school, or students who have spread rumors or lies about me more than once on social media. So this is one dimension of school climate. While I'm on this slide, I'll also talk about another part of my update, which is status of the Equity Improvement Plan, because it's germane to the topic of safety. As you know, the equity audit found that, quote, students and family members shared in surveys and focus groups many examples of times when a student's disability made them a target of bullying or was met with indifference from teachers and staff, close quote. As a DEI team, we are looking very deeply into the issue of bullying. As you know, it's something I've been trying to lift up this year in the district. And it's an area where I've asked students to take the lead. I can tell you this is a very important issue for them. We're working with Vanetta from the Collaborative to organize a set of focus group discussions with students and families to learn more about the kinds of harassment and bullying that students have experienced and what we can do to shift the culture so that all students are treated with respect. So you'll be hearing more about that in upcoming meetings. So moving from the safety component of student perceptions of school culture, let's look at perceptions of cultural competence, relationships, and student participation, collectively known as engagement. And here, 8th grade students also showed slightly depressed perceptions of climate in the domain This is the domain that asks questions such as, my textbook or class materials include people and examples that reflect my race, cultural background, or identity. My parents feel respected when they participate at our school, for example, at teacher conferences or open houses, and students here respect one another. So again, seeing lower values in grade 8, and the rest of the grades basically on par with the state. The third subscale of the student perceptions of climate are what are known as the mental health and discipline environment. Again, the 8th grade perceptions of climate were slightly lower than the statewide perceptions. On this dimension, students respond to questions such as, my teachers believe that all students can do well in their learning. Students help each other learn without having to be asked by the teacher. And if I need help with my emotions or feelings, effective help is available at my school. So you can see pretty consistent trend there, showing that 8th grade is the area of concern. Disaggregating each of the grades by student group, you can see that 4th graders had above average perceptions of safety in most student groups, and that students with disabilities had above average perceptions in all 3 domains. Shows a significant improvement in perceptions of safety by students with disabilities, so this is our first celebration. As compared to last year, you might remember students with disabilities pretty much across the board showed depressed perceptions of culture. So that is a shift we're seeing this year, so I'm happy about that, especially since that was one of the groups that was identified in the equity audit as being more likely to be the target of some things that might make them feel badly about being in school. In grade 5, low-income students improved their perceptions of school climate in all 3 domains, going from having a small but significant negative difference from the state average in all 3 domains to having a small but significant positive difference from the state in all 3 domains. And this is another cause for celebration because this is another group that was called out in the equity audit as being targeted by peers. So it's really encouraging for me to see that shift, particularly in that group of students. And then looking at the views in grade 8, as is clear from the previous slides, student perceptions of school climate in grade 8 showed a small but significant negative difference from the statewide average, and that's across most groups and across most domains. But there are some signs of improvement in 8th grade that I'd like to point out. One is that although they remain below statewide averages, we saw the overall perceptions of school climate by Hispanic and Latino and low-income students improve from 2022 to 2023 by 7 and 5 index points respectively, which are statistically significant changes. Hispanic students were one of the few student subgroups that matched the statewide average in the domain of safety, and students with disabilities matched the statewide averages for perceptions of climate in all 3 domains. And you may be wondering why, for example, a 39 in safety for Hispanic or Latino is in the white color as opposed to a 40 in the all student groups being in red color. That's because we're comparing students to their statewide averages for their subgroups, and the averages for the subgroup changes across the state.
I'm sorry, John, can I ask you a quick question on this?
Please do.
So if you're saying all students, let's say environment, all students, the average is 36%, correct?
Correct.
If you go down there, you have 38, 39, 36, 37, 38, 44, and 36. They're all 36 or higher. Shouldn't that 36 number be higher?
Well, some
If
of
it's
those,
an average?
some of those groups are quite small. So, for example, students with disabilities doesn't pull it up very much because that's a small group. The non-low income students, the non-low income students is the predominant group, and that's at 36. So some of the groups that are higher or smaller, and my only way to interpret that is that those groups aren't big enough to pull up the average for the whole.
So is there a group that's not shown on this? Or those all the
There-
subsets?
There are some groups that don't show because they're too small. If a group has fewer than 20 students, it's not included as a subgroup, but is included in the whole group. So that might also contribute as well.
Are there also students who are in multiple subgroups?
That is,
So that impacts that.
Okay,
So
I
it
understand.
hits those subgroups twice.
All right, cool, I understand, thank you.
Yeah.
So I was going to wait for the end for this question. And you could say that you want to answer it at the end, but I see we're struggling with culture and climate in the 8th grade, and I know that we're talking about reorganization in the school district, moving the 8th grade to the high school. Do we have any feel or any idea if that is going to have a positive or negative impact on the 8th grade culture and climate? Because we already have a problem, and I'm worried that it might make it worse.
yeah, I have been thinking a lot about that, and I really don't know what will happen. One of the things I wonder about, and it's just a wonder, and I have no evidence, but I wonder if part of what contributes to it is sort of a closed-in feeling of sort of overcrowded spaces and inappropriate spaces. So I think that moving students out of the middle school might help from that perspective. But there might be negative consequences of coming to the high school too. You know, being, instead of the group that is sort of the oldest, being the group that's the youngest might have a negative impact on it. And I don't know how to judge what kind of impact there will be based on that move.
Mike, I think that'll be an excellent question to bring up Wednesday when we do the 3 site visits to different schools.
That's a good point, yeah, to ask them.
Yeah.
Thanks. And if there are any other questions, feel free to stop me as I'm going along. I'm happy to answer while it's fresh. Okay, so moving on to grade 10. Grade 10, students of perceptions of culture were not significantly different from the statewide average for any group or dimension, with the exception of students with disabilities who showed a small negative difference on the safety dimension.
What about low income at 41% and non-students with disabilities at 40%?
So as I was trying to explain earlier, this is comparing them to their statewide average for the subgroup.
Okay.
So each subgroup has different averages. So next, I'm just going to once again look at, remind you of what our peer districts are. These are the way we compare ourselves to see how we're doing. You know, there are some districts that would be unfair comparisons for us because they face challenges that we do not face. And there are some districts that would be unfair for us to compare ourselves to because they have resources that we don't have. So if you're wanting to get a clear sense of how we're doing as a district, I think the best thing to do is to look at ourselves based on comparator districts. And the Department of Education every year identifies peer districts for every district in the state. Everyone gets a group of 10. According to the algorithm, you're sort of in the middle of the group. The main things that you're matched on are the overall enrollment, your low income percentage, student disability percentage, and English language learner percentages. So if you look just at the 2002 enrollment, which is the data that it's still drawing from in order to create our peer group, you can see those are all districts of similar sizes that enroll similar kinds of students. The challenge for us is to become the exemplar within our peer group for as many groups and subjects as possible. And that's what we look at in the next set of slides, where we take a look at how do we perform in comparison to districts that are similar to ours. I thought I was going to advance the slide. Okay. So starting with grades 5 and 8 science and technology engineering performance by subgroup. Just to reorient you to the data displays that are upcoming, Results are shown for our student subgroup performance in comparison to the range of scores observed among that subgroup in our peer districts. That's what the boxes are. So each one of these boxes basically just shows the range from the bottom score obtained by that subgroup within our peer districts to the top score. We also can see the comparisons between the statewide average in 2019 for all students. That's sort of the pre-COVID year, which I think is still relevant because you can see in many cases we're still trying to get to the pre-COVID level. You can see the 22-23 state average for all students, which proves that point because the line for 2023 is below the line for 2019, showing that as a state we still haven't recovered. Also, you can see the range for the LVPEC districts, although I think it's important to point out that none of the districts in the LVPEC are a peer district for us. They're all significantly different, such that none of them are considered to be a good comparison by DESE. Coming off strong performance in 5th and 8th grade science last year, we did backtrack a little this year. However, our students as a whole matched the pre-COVID statewide average. This performance also put us well into the top half of the range for performance among LVPEC districts. We saw a comparable closing of sex-based performance gaps, with male and female students having very similar performances. However, students with disabilities and low-income students, as well as high-need students, which is a group that includes both students with disabilities and low-income students, as well as students who are learning English, all did very poorly. In fact, students with disabilities and high-need students perform better in every single one of our peer districts, which is why the students in these subgroups are represented in red. Moving on to grades 3 through 8 English language arts performance by subgroup. The performance in 3 through 8 in ELA was not much changed from the previous year. Overall, 1% fewer students met or exceeded expectations on MCAS. On the positive side, the performance of no student subgroup was among the lowest of comparator districts, and the proportion of students with disabilities meeting or exceeding expectations increased 3% from last year. Continue to be concerned about the gap between male and female students, which widened last year and was present in all grade levels. I also just say as an English teacher, that one kind of hits me kind of close to the heart. You can see that our students' performance was above the 2023 statewide average and the LVPEC average, but not quite back up to the pre-COVID statewide average. Looking at grades 3 through 8 mathematics. What will jump out right away is the relative difference between our students' performance in English language arts and in math, whereas performance decreased slightly in English language arts, it actually increased in mathematics. But the reason there are so many red bars on this graph and none on the other is because we started out that much farther behind our peer districts in mathematics, which is one of the reasons why I prioritize it for improvement. Nevertheless, improvement we saw was widespread. We saw a greater proportion of students with disabilities, Black students, Hispanic or Latino students, male and female students, non-disabled students, and non-low-income students meeting or exceeding expectations than the year before. But as I said, we started out at a deficit in this area, and so still have a long way to go. Benchmarking technique can...
Just a question. I'm wondering if the change in the education and math curriculum and the LA curriculum, I think teachers are getting to know it, getting better at it, and I think they're going to need time, and I think that could be one of the things too.
I agree wholeheartedly. Implementation dips of at least 18 months are pretty common. I didn't go into that on this because this actually wasn't a dip, this actually was an improvement.
Yeah.
But it still is an improvement that isn't enough to catch us up to our peer districts. But I do think that we will see that improvement accelerate in future years as we're next year only having one new grade implementing illustrative, that's 7th grade. For the rest of the grades, they'll be on their 2nd year. As I'm about to say, the benchmarking technique can produce some strange results, so I think it's important to point them out when they occur. Here, for example, our highest performing racial subgroup was Asian students, but they're the only racial group highlighted in red because the same subgroup performed higher in all of our comparator districts. So even though they were the highest performing for us, they still have the red bar because they were the lowest performing in comparison to our peer districts. Conversely, the Black and Hispanic or Latino students performed worse, but are colored in blue because they fell within the average range of the observed scores performance in their peer districts. So you can see they were both at about the midpoint of the ranges for their respective groups in our comparator districts. Again, our performance was above the 2023 statewide average, but below the pre-COVID level. It was not quite up to the midpoint of the LVPEC range, and accelerating the small improvements we saw in grades 3 through 8 mathematics will continue to be a priority. So, moving on to high school. This is the first slide where you see the color green. I've used this color wherever our students are the exemplar for the group. This means our students at the top of the range for a group of comparison districts. So this is another piece of really great news I have to share. First, students in our Black and Hispanic or Latino subgroups achieved at a higher rate in high school science than any of our peer districts. I can also tell you that the range of scores observed between racial groups is smaller in our district this year than it was last year in high school science, showing that we're reducing racial achievement gaps. This, I'll also note, if you're wondering where the 2019 pre-COVID average is on this slide, you don't have that because that was a time when we were giving what was known as the legacy MCAS in high school. So there is no 2019 comparable test to go back to for high school. So we can only look at what the statewide average is currently. The slide also contains one of those curious results that requires further explanation. Our multiracial students showed very similar achievement rates to those of other races. Nevertheless, the multiracial group is represented in red in that same, because that same student subgroup performed better in our comparison districts. We were the low district for that student subgroup. Low-income students and male students also performed at the bottom of their respective peer groups, which is a cause of concern. However, most student subgroups performed above the statewide average for all students. And you can see that we also scored above the midpoint for the LVPEC districts. Next, high school language arts. We have more good news to report when it comes to ELA. Again, you see green bars indicating that our Black and Asian students were exemplars for our peer group. In fact, 100% of Asian students met or exceeded expectations on 10th grade MCAS, which is something I've not seen before in all the years I've been doing this for any subgroup. And the white student subgroup missed exemplar status by only 1%. In the all students category, we missed exemplar status by only 2%. You can see that our students' performance is well above pre-COVID levels, high school, and it's very close to the top of the range for LVPEC districts. And a factor that contributed significantly to the improvement that we saw here was a reduction in the gap between male students and female students. As you recall from last year, male students scored significantly worse than female students. They are still trailing, but showed strong improvements as a very large subgroup, so that pushed everybody. So this is a group where we came 1% or 2% away from running the table. And really, what I'd point to in particular is the need to improve achievement for students with disabilities. Take a look at that group that's sort of at the lower end of the range. That is where I think we're going to find the 1 or 2% of students that we need in order to be the best. Next, looking at high school mathematics. Our Black and Hispanic or Latino students were exemplars, and we were just 2 percentage points away from exemplar status in our white student subgroup and our all student subgroup. You can see this also places us well above the pre-COVID statewide average and puts us right at the top of the range for LVPEC districts. Again, I think that 1 or 2%, you say, well, where's it going to come from? I think it has to be students with disabilities, because that's the group where you can see there's still some additional performance that we should be able to get out of that group. You may have seen media coverage of the national crisis of chronic absenteeism, which is defined as students being absent for 10% or more of their school days, and the commissioners prioritized this problem in his recent statements. We exceeded our attendance targets last year, bringing our overall incidence of chronic absenteeism from 19.7 to 13%, which is another cause for celebration. This puts us in the top quartile in Massachusetts for student attendance. However, we're still below our pre-COVID rate of 8.8% chronically absent. And as you can see from these tables, the learning outcomes for students who are chronically absent were much worse than for those students who were present for at least 90% of instruction. So I've said our MTSS 1.0 is not the best or the final. One of the things that I've been thinking about is an omission from that is lack of any kind of attendance, tiered attendance intervention. As you can see, targeting students who are not attending school and getting them to increase their attendance rate could be a very powerful intervention for improving the overall achievement of students. So I think the next version of our MTSS book will have more information about things we can do to improve attendance. As you can see from this table, some of our currently lowest achieving student groups, including students with disabilities, low-income students, and students who are learning English, and Hispanic or Latino students, are showing higher incidence of chronic absenteeism than their peers in other groups. As compared to the overall rate of 13% chronic absenteeism, students in these groups were chronically absent at rates of 24.5, 24.6, 30.6, and 18.4% respectively. Given the fact that our lowest performing student groups are also the ones with the highest rates of chronic absenteeism, it's important for us to keep working with families to reestablish the expectation that almost all students should be in school almost every day. And we also need to go back to that cultural data, because some of the students who are least likely to attend are also some of the students who have the lowest perceptions of culture. In fact, one of the questions on the vocal survey asks students if they've avoided school because they didn't feel comfortable there. And some of these groups that are not attending say, yeah, I did. Okay. So we have one final data display. Show our student groups that are under or overrepresented on any student success or risk factor we track. This is just a scale. As a reminder, risk factors are reverse coded. There's really only one risk factor, but it's reverse coded because a higher representation on that variable represents a negative outcome as opposed to a positive outcome, which is the case for all the rest of them. So we see many of the same patterns as last year. In general, Hispanic or Latino students, low-income students, and students with disabilities continue to be underrepresented on many of the success factors, while Asian students, non-low-income students, non-disabled students continue to be overrepresented on a lot of the success factors. You may recall that in 2022, there were some sex-based differences noted at the high school in which female students were overrepresented in success in English language arts, and male students were underrepresented. In 2023, that difference was not present. That's why I said I think one of the main drivers in the higher ELA achievement we saw at the high school was addressing that sex-based difference and bringing male student achievement up more comparable to their female peers. We also saw improvements in math achievement, especially in the math achievement of black students in grades 3 through 8. In 2022, they were underrepresented by 50% in the total number of students meeting or exceeding expectations. In 2023, they remained underrepresented, but by 20% instead of 50%. So that's how this chart works. Every time we can take one of the cells and change it to a lighter color or change it to white, we're moving towards equity. So that's what we're looking for. We also saw a large improvement in math achievement of Hispanic or Latino students at the high school, where they went from being underrepresented by 40% among those meeting or exceeding expectations to being within 10% of what would be expected based on their proportion of the student body. In 9th grade course passing, there's good news to report in terms of racial equity, with students of all racial groups passing courses in numbers that were commensurate with their representation. In 2022, you may recall, students, Hispanic or Latino students, were underrepresented among 9th grade course passers, so that's a gain. We did, however, see a decline in course passing among 9th graders with disabilities. Please note this data lags by a year, so we're always 1 year behind this as compared to the rest of the data. You can see that we have attendance rates in most groups with about 10%, within about a 10% range, which is an improvement from last year, where chronic absenteeism among low-income students and students with disabilities was running 20 to 30% higher than the overall average. And I'm proud to share that we've seen an increase in the higher ed enrollment of our Hispanic or Latino students, who were represented by about 30% in fall higher ed enrollments in the class of 21. But in the class of 22, they enrolled in higher ed in numbers that were commensurate with their proportion of the graduating class. So again, that one lags by a year, but that's an improvement. And as you can see, we continue to show differences in our discipline practices, with students of color, male students, low-income students, and students with disabilities more likely to be subject to internal, external suspension. However, while the disproportionality continues, the overall number of students involved in exclusionary discipline and the days of discipline dropped dramatically. In 2022, 185 students were internally or externally suspended, and the average number of days of suspension was 3.9, with the maximum length of suspension being 31 days. Last year, 97 students were suspended, with an average being 4.3 and the maximum length being 17 days. So that means there were at least 300 fewer days of administratively imposed absences last year, which is very important given the data we've shown about what chronic absenteeism does to achievement, because after all, a suspension is a day of absence, even though it's a day when you can't choose to be here. So we've reduced exclusions by half or more among all groups. We still have the inequity between groups. It's as if we took everyone at the level they were at 2022 and cut them in half. So the overall rate is lower, significantly lower, but the same groups that were high before are still high now. So that's the next frontier. We have to work on addressing race as a factor in suspension. We have to look at addressing disability and wealth as a factor in suspension. I will point out that one thing we've seen as we've reduced suspensions overall is a shift towards male students. It seems like we've been more successful at reducing suspension of female students than male students, so there is a little bit of sex-based difference. We need to continue working on figuring out what it is that causes boys to get into serious trouble at higher rates than girls. So that is, in a nutshell, what we have for accountability for 2023. And if there are any other questions, I'm here. If there are any celebrations, we have principals here. Speak to it.
John, I got a question. Is this microphone working? Can you hear me? Okay. At the beginning, I noticed when you were talking about the number of students, the number of teachers of general education, that we had less general educators and it was higher with the state. We had more special ed teachers. But if I remember correctly, we had less teachers, but we had far more paraprofessionals supporting those teachers. So if you look at, I don't know how else to put it, bodies, professional bodies that are in front of the students, we have a higher number. And our class sizes, how do our class sizes hold up across?
So our class sizes are on the high side, especially right now. I would point out kindergarten and first grade. And I also think some of the middle school classes are pretty large in Wilbraham.
Well, we worked so hard to keep those down, so, I mean, they were higher. So I guess we need to work on getting those even lower. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, just a quick question.
Bill.
Just a quick question. As I look at the high school numbers, you have different groups that are noted, but I noticed in high school science and tech, we don't have the Asian students listed.
Yep.
I don't know if that was unintentional or was there a reason?
That happens because anytime there's a group smaller than 20, it's suppressed because sharing information about a group that small gets to the point of almost sharing information about individuals.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I just was curious.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Are you done? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. I actually did address that as I talked about the issue with bullying and the work that the DEI group is about to embark to try to get a better understanding of bullying.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for John? Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we will move on to new business, MASC resolutions.
Actually, can I make a quick, can we have maybe Julie speak before we go into the MASC resolutions? Just so she doesn't have to sit through all that. We'll save you some punishment.
Here?
Is that okay? Thank you.
I think first we're going to watch a video. I think there were two reasons I was asked to come. One, to talk about the 8th grade coming to Minichog and some of the spacing issues at the high school and what we anticipate, and then some questions about maybe current traffic flow patterns. So we did a little video so you can maybe get a feel for your typical run through at the high school, and then I'll go through some numbers quickly and then can answer any questions you might have. So this is our left side serving line. I think there were some concerns about backup at the serving line and going through the register. It's fairly apparent in this video that things flow pretty smoothly. We did some statistics about how long it takes your average student to get through the line, and once they were in line, it was a low of 30 seconds to a high of 2 minutes. This is our far side, which actually, and you can see this student, you know, he grabs his meal and he's through the register fairly quickly. I would say the longest part of lunch is if they're actually in line for one of our more popular items. And we averaged from the start of the first bell to the last student served, our average was about 6.5 minutes. And that also takes into consideration, it takes kids 2 or 3 minutes just to get to the cafeteria, depending on where they are from the building. On our most popular day, the longest line we had was about 10 minutes out of a 30-minute lunch period. Now this part of the video shows some spacing in our cafeteria tables. We have both round and long tables. At the moment, as you can see, there is ample space in the cafeteria, but that could change, you know, based on our 8th graders coming in. So some of those tables you'll just see a few kids. This table here doesn't have any students at it. It's still clean. The seats haven't been pulled down. This table here had, I think we had 14, which is about our maximum, and they were all looked like freshmen. This is on Main Street. We have 2 long tables out on Main Street that give students an opportunity to eat if they want to get out of the crowded space. And then this is the outside area where I think Mr. Hale has indicated he was looking for some type of more permanent structure. This was a pretty cold day, so we did have some students out on the bleachers, but not students at tables. But during the nice weather, we do have quite a few students that go outside and eat outside, so I think he was looking for a covered structure. So one of the statistics that I did was with our tables, right now we have 33 round tables. That seat 8 is probably your maximum. 6 is probably comfortable, but 8 can get in. The long tables, we have 17, 2 of them are out on Main Street, and those seat 12 to 14. So that one table you did see 14, we looked at them today, they were all 14 kind of little guys. 12 would probably be much more comfortable. We have 6 single desks, which I'm not sure you picked up on there in the back of the cafeteria for those students that really just want to sit by themselves. So that's a total of 474 seats per lunch. Now that is if every seat is taken, which obviously doesn't happen. So if you have a table of 5 friends, you're less likely to have 2 friends come in and join that table. They'll find somewhere else to sit. So, you know, you can say you have that many seats, but the reality of high school sitting down, some of that social hierarchy plays in. One of the great things is universal free meals. One of the challenges with that is universal free meals. We're serving more meals than we ever could have imagined, and it seems to go up every week, whereas I think more kids and more parents are figuring out universal free meals and are getting sick of making lunches. So we're averaging 680 meals per day at the high school. Now that's meals only, not including kids that come in and grab a snack or water or a la carte or get a second meal. That's 680 reimbursable meals. It's about 68% of students at the high school get a reimbursable meal every day. That used before universal free meals, that was about 38% of our high school students. So I can be sympathetic to the bus drivers, is also getting the labor to service those meals has been a challenge for us. In October, last October at this time, we were doing about 555 meals. So we've seen a pretty big significant increase just in 1 year. If we talk about the 8th grade, so there's about 216 current 8th graders, bringing those into the high school, and we talk about our 68% participation, that comes out to about 48 additional students per lunch if we stay with 3 lunches. That would be coming through and buying lunch. More of those students obviously would be sitting, but 48% for us was service. And just as a little bit of a comparison, 2011-2012, the year we opened Minnechaug High School, we had 1,250 students in the high school, and it was tight that first year. I'm not sure how many people were around then, but we definitely had some space issues that first year. So I kind of did just a quick number based on our current populations moving up And it looks like we'll have about 1,160 with the 8th grade coming in. That's not an exact science, but that was just a quick calculation, so.
Julie, I have a question. With the 3 or 4 different places that students can populate and have lunch, what do you do for supervision? Like for the outside, for the hall, for the inside? How much staff do you have that just does supervision?
I think now there are 2 lunch monitors out in the hallway. And, yeah, maybe we can, yeah. We don't really supervise, we just give them their food and ship them off.
That's all right.
Next thing.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So for the three lunch waves that we have, for the outside, there's one supervisor for the outside. Even on the really nice days, it's manageable to have one adult out there. There is another adult at the doorway that leads to the outside, but also leads down the main hallway, sort of contained in there. So they're in that hallway on the inside. There are 2. There's one at that place I just mentioned, and one down by the locker room hallway. So there are 2 there. And then in the large cafeteria, an administrator at each lunch, as well as 2 more cafeteria monitors.
And what about the bathrooms? Because I've heard there's been some problems with the bathrooms.
In what sense?
Smoke coming from
Mm-hmm.
them. So do those 2 that are up at the door and down near the cafeteria, do they also go through the bathrooms?
So
Say, get out, you're done.
So during your lunch, it's a very populated bathroom during lunch, so you really don't have time. So if, what the 2 monitors out in the hallway do is, if this line continues to grow outside the bathroom, then the appropriate staff member will go in and say, get out of here. So those aren't really the 2 bathrooms. Huh? Not for that, no.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Anything else? I highly recommend you try Minichog lunch, just saying.
Hey, Julie, I've heard so many great things about the food that you present and everything like that. There's some really good healthy choices that the kids are participating in. Thank you for that. But by your own words, if you said, like, if I got this correctly, between 6 and 10 minutes it takes for a student to, come into the cafeteria, select their food, go to the cashier, and leave. That represents 20 to 30, roughly, % of the time that they have for lunch. I have heard from students, they were saying it was more, it was like 15 minutes, on average, whatever, but that could just be an exaggeration if you're sitting there with your timing. But still, 6 to 10 seems to be significant. Now, you had mentioned that there were some issues getting labor. Would having another cashier or so, or another helper and back, would that help move things along faster? It's a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I think one of the things to remember in that 6 to 10 minutes is that is from the first bell. So you're between 2 and 5 minutes just getting to the cafeteria. So a kid may be saying, it's 15 minutes before I sit down, but he started, in the back hall, he came down and talked to his friends for a couple minutes, put his bag down. By the time he gets in line, and we sometimes encourage kids, sit for a minute first, why stand there for, go, you have plenty of time during your lunch to go and sit. I think as far as extra help goes, we're actually at the high school at the moment, we are fully staffed, and we're looking to add 1 more person. We have a job posted right now. I think what we would look at when our 8th graders come is more of the grab and go type things, because it's definitely a difference from side to side. So on a popcorn chicken bowl side, that's the lunch that may take you 10 minutes. It's popular, there's a big line. Kids that are coming in on the left side that can grab a pre-made wrap or a salad or a slice of pizza that's already there, those kids are through super easy. So I think it's looking at some of those options. We may even look at whether we need to, some of it's based on equipment, so we only have a hotline on that side, so we can only do popcorn chicken on that side. Maybe if we're going to do more kids, we're going to do a hotline on 2 sides now, so that we can cut that time. on the more popular items. When it's calzone day, we split them up, we can serve that item on both sides because we don't need real hot storage, so that goes pretty quick. So I think, you know, for us, we're always looking at, whether it's an elementary school or our high school is, you know, I've been here for 23 years, believe it or not.
Help out the teachers, help out the parents, help out the administration, things that you see and such.
Right.
But more at the high school, especially with the moving the 8th graders in, you know, potentially, if we can get our game going, if we have to get some more equipment or whatever, you know.
Right. And I do like my past years at high school to talk to the kids, and I have, you know, one who's a mom of kids, so she knows all the kids, so she takes that extra time. How was your game? How was your day? You know, certainly we could just not talk to them and make them go through as quick as possible. So I think it's that balance between making it a good experience. But eating, have a place where they can go outside and get some fresh air and spread out a little bit and do some talking and relaxing.
So I had a question. I've been listening to you talk, and I just want to clarify, both for you and for John. So if the decision is made to move the 8th grade up to the high school, the plan is for
a decision is made.
And all I would add to that is that you can think of the school lunch program as being almost an enterprise account. In the right situation, it should be covering its own costs to the fee it's charging. Or right now, I think most lunch programs are pretty flush because of the universal reimbursement they're getting. Of course, if they're ever in red, you have to cover it because they can't end in a deficit. But for the most part, the school lunch program pays for itself.
Julie, I would just like to thank you for 23 years of amazing diligence and work. There was a time when the school service, or the school lunch service, was not in a very good place. And due to the work that you put into this, you have made it an amazing, amazing enterprise. And I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
More years.
Maybe not 20.
Thank you. Thank you to all the principals for being here as well tonight. So we will move on to the MAC resolutions. Thank you. MAC resolutions. Sean,
go ahead as our MASC delegate.
There you go. Let me just find it. There we go. All right, so what we do is I'm the representative for the conference, which I believe the voting is Wednesday night. Basically, we come to a consensus here on how you would like me to represent the school committee. The first resolution is for full stable funding for Medco. If you go here to the overview, it's that they want to create, the legislature to create a stable fund structure to support Medco and its partner districts that fully funds and supports provided for Medco, and that the cost of providing services delivered by Medco partners district. This is not, we're just asking whether we want to have the MASC and the MASS to go to the state and saying, you know, these are the resolutions that are supported by member communities. Go ahead, Bill.
Asking the state for more funding.
Right?
Yeah, good one. But, I mean, the program has been around since 1966. We currently participate in Medco. If the state has a program that has a reasonable purpose, then the state should fund it.
All right, all those who would like me to vote yes on this? Okay, anyone opposed? No? All right, great. The second resolution is regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. Basically, the bidding practices of school transportation providers. They want to investigate that and to present such findings and recommendations as may be necessary to contain costs and make more efficient transportation services available for public schools. It's just the whole process of the bidding process can get a little murky sometimes when you have a district that only has one person bid. It can really get murky, and I think that's what this is to encourage. It was brought by Southeastern Vocational Technical School Committee.
So you're saying it's murky?
Yeah. All those in favor of resolution number 2 say aye. There you go, thank you. Regional transportation is the third. It's from, let's see, where's it from? Oh, the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District. It's from us. This is the one that we put forth. I'm all in favor of it. Those in favor?
Before we vote on that, I just would like, so when we had gone before the MASC Resolutions Committee, there was a recommendation to remove the fee portion because they do not recommend asking to collect fees. So I would recommend making that amendment to remove the fee portion, and basically for the results that we require the Commonwealth to reimburse each regional district to the full extent of the amounts expended for such transportation.
Okay, so you want me to make on the floor an amendment?
Yes, if people are okay with that.
Sure.
That's basically what we're asking for full reimbursement for the transportation, but in the, I think in one of the clauses in the whereas, I think we're asking for, we're either asking for people to be allowed to opt out or be able to pay a fee. And I just recommend removing the fee.
When I read it, the way it reads, if the fee is removed, then there'll be no consequence for the state falling short on their responsibility to fund it. Right? The request for the fee is to only bridge the gap between what the state was supposed to fund and what they didn't fund. It seemed to me that I like the way it was worded because that was in there as a consequence, you know, and it's going to piss off the family and the fellow families go pick it at the state house because the state didn't pay it. I don't think, I can understand the MASC perspective. It probably won't pass with that in there because it'll be unpopular and just having the fee in there, of course, we're talking about equity and you're adding a fee, and that speaks only to disequity.
But it does say in here about the fee. what was it that you would like me to add to it?
Just the MASC, the resolutions committee, they just advised that we don't request what the fee.
They wanted us to take it out, but it's still in here.
Right, but so because we submitted our resolution like on the very last minute, and then we had gone to the resolutions committee, so we weren't able to make the additional amendment before before the resolutions committee met. So I'm just asking for the amendment that you can make on the floor to our resolution. So, anyway.
I understand, but at the same time, I'd like to see that hammered out among the delegates. I'd be very interested to hear the conversation that comes out of that. I just think that would be that's kind of as Dr. HWRSD alluded to, I mean, that's a fulcrum. I mean, that's a pressure point for the state to say, you know, hey, listen, if you're not going to fund it, well, we should be able to charge a fee to be able to cover the differences. Right. If students don't want it, they can opt out of the busing program, so they don't have to pay a fee and they'll be transported separately.
It'll put more pressure, I think, on the state, you know, for them to say, oh, we will only give 8, well, what are we at now? We're 90%? No, we were at 90, it's not 90. Is it 90?
It's about 90% this year, yeah.
Okay, so far, right? So that means we should be able to take that extra 10 and go to the parents with fees and stuff to help us get up to that, rather than having to take that money from education and put it towards busing. I think that was the whole reason for that.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk more, I'll understand more, and I will bring it up.
Okay.
Okay? Is everyone in favor of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. All those? Show of hands? Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Any opposed? No? All right. Just as a point of order, last year you guys had me say no on everything. So this is good. Yeah. Urge. So the resolution number 4, diversity, equity, and inclusion, basically recommends all districts adopt a position of DEI coordinator to work towards an anti-racism school system. So they're just looking to encourage the DEI, that each school district have a DEI representative, which we have.
Recommend is the word.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we're a small district. I like the fact that we've gone with the Pioneer Valley.
Yeah, but we still have one. Yeah, I don't think you have.
As opposed to it being our person.
But she is our person. Or I don't know, I think we're not looking. Yeah, she is, yeah. So, but she's a person of other districts as well. That's all right. I understand what you're saying now. All right, all those in favor of resolution number 4? Anyone opposed? All right. Aaron, do you guys have anything to add to the previous one, or we're good? Awesome. All right, resolution number 5, MA School Building Authority. Where is it here? That be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committee calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to amend by removing the $800 million cap and what else is there? To allow public preschools to be included in the accelerated repair program and core program. Right? I like that one. Any questions? All those in favor?
No. The accelerated program as opposed to the core program.
The accelerated repair program. So for example, Bill, you know more about this, but it's like you want to get windows done, or you want to get the new roof done, or you want to get the doors done, rather than building a whole new wing or a whole new building. It's the accelerated repairs.
I like the first half of it, I don't like the second half of it. The reason why I say that is because you're now putting private preschools at a decided disadvantage, because you are having people that own a preschool, and now they're paying taxes that are going into the MSBA fund that are now funding the construction of the school building that they will be in direct competition with.
But don't
forget that private preschools are at an incredible advantage.
Yes.
They don't have to follow the same regulations.
private preschools do not have to have certified union representative, teachers, teaching the children, but public schools do.
I would still look at it as a disadvantage. I still look at it as a disadvantage. I don't like that. I don't like that part of it. I like the part of removing the cap.
Sure, the state will love that.
But now you remove the cap, and like I said, now you're adding in the preschool component to it. And like I said, I mean, there's a town like this. I mean, how many preschools do we have? And we're small. You have the Y program, you've got church, you've got, so now now you've got them basically saying, well, we're spending tax dollars and we're funding the building of a school that we're in direct competition with. And it is direct competition.
Yeah, but don't forget, for the most part, the public preschools that we run are primarily, as I understand, mandated for IEPs, but also, and very important, to have integration. So non-IEP students are brought in only as necessary so that there are fully integrated preschool experiences for the kids with IEPs. We're not in the business of preschool. It's not cost effective for us, as I understand it, to run preschool, even though our community has asked multiple times, right, for us to help expand the preschool options that are here. And I've even made options. I made suggestions when I was on FinCom in Wilbraham that, hey, maybe Memorial Building should be rented out to a private preschool and let them come in, they get some toilets and stuff that I shut down. But anyway.
All right, all those in favor of Resolution 5 about the, all in favor? All right, Bill? Gotcha.
I'll vote in favor of it, in the idea that I'd be interested to hear the discussion on the floor of the delegates. But I personally, I think that for that reason.
I have no problem bringing up that one of our representatives did have an issue with that because of that reason. I have no problem bringing that up. Okay. Resolution 6, School Bus Stop Armed Surveillance Act and Enforcement of Penalties. Basically, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Associated School Committee calls on the Massachusetts Legislature to enact legislation raising the fine for passing a stopped school bus to a significant schedule of fines as penalty, whether witnessed by a police officer or recorded by a digital video detection system. And I think we all know and have seen this a lot that, it was interesting. Today, I was driving with my son, and there's a school bus that was stopped, and I stopped, and he said, well, why didn't you go forward? I said, it says 100 yards, and I think I'm maybe 70, I'm not even 100. I should be even further back, right? Huh? 100 feet, yeah. Well, 100 yards, that would be very, but I understand, yeah. So that was a conversation that we had, but then also you see people who, get frustrated and they drive around the bus because they're late for whatever reason, and that can just be disastrous. Any questions or issues?
So, I'm going to vote in favor of this because I'm obviously, completely behind the thought and the heart that's behind this, and, kids who get hit all the time in this kind of circumstance, and pediatric trauma, so I don't like to see that and all that kind of stuff. However, I don't see how this could possibly fly or become a reality in the state of Massachusetts, because in Massachusetts, you can't get a speeding ticket from a camera, you can't get a moving traffic violation from just a camera. You need to be witnessed by an officer, pulled over, and have that interaction. So I'm fully in support of it, but I feel that, particularly because they talk about it, the wording in here when they talk about the same enforcement and the same penalty. Like, I think that it might fly if there was a fine that could be sent to them that wasn't a moving violation. So it didn't affect the points on their driving record, that might be able to get through. But I think that they'd have to fundamentally change the traffic laws in Massachusetts for the camera on the school bus to be able to issue a moving violation.
Yeah, the other issue that I have with this is that you're now putting school bus drivers in a position of being sort of deputized.
The cameras, it's all about, it has to be on camera.
Right, but I'm still saying they're responsible for running the cameras, and you may have people that are driving the bus that are like, I don't want to get in the middle of, some legal argument, because I was driving the bus, I saw the school bus by, here's the camera, and now all of a sudden I'm being called as a witness in a criminal case against a person. For Mike's reasons as well, I mean, the idea of minimizing the risk to children getting on and off a school bus it's laudable. I see a lot of problems with this approach to it. I do like the idea of, I think that the fines should be very much higher for people who are witness passing the school bus. I don't think that should be a question. But, you know, much like we've dealt in the past with some of the MASC resolutions, they sort of bridge beyond where we are as school districts, and, you know, it really gets into your local and your state legislatures to start making decisions like that. I would be much more comfortable to have a resolution from the MASC and the MASS saying, we believe that we should be looking at increasing penalties, finding ways to increase enforcement, and let's work with the legislature to come up with, you know, with fines, et cetera, for those infractions. But, you know, I'm just looking at we just had a resolution, I think it was resolution 2, looking at investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. And now we're talking about having, you know, we already have a limited number of bus companies. Now we're talking about putting video surveillance cameras on every bus and the cost involved in that. And then where does our transportation costs go? Transportation costs go through the roof, because now we not only have to maintain the bus, but we have to maintain the video monitoring equipment that's on the bus.
I do believe, though, in the wording that it's not mandatory.
Right.
So it would be an option if they want, give the bus company.
Whereas technology advances have now made possible digital video violation detection monitoring systems to detect drivers failing to stop for school buses. I remember as a kid in the 1700s where I got on a bus, and we actually had a bus driver, you know, got down the license number, told us kids, we wrote it down, and then she went to the police afterwards and told them that someone passed, almost hit a student, me, and yeah, so I mean, I was a kid, I don't remember what happened. I survived. But I mean, I was proud of her for that. She was very upset about it. She got the license, and then she dropped us off, and then she said she went right to the police and talked to them about it, gave them the license number. I mean, I don't know what came out of that, but this is a more, you know, rather than her word, this is, if there's a video detection system, they should be able to use that. I get what you're saying. People should just not mess with buses when kids are getting on or off Hudson.
Absolutely. And of course, the other complication is you capture the license plate, so.
Who's driving?
Correct.
Yeah.
So anybody can be driving the vehicle with or without permission, right? But it's not necessarily the owner of the vehicle that's committing the atrocity.
If you want to take down, you know, just a couple of notes, I mean,
The non-moving violation.
Again, the way the delegates work is everybody gets together and kind of hashes it out. I don't have a problem with opening up the discussion, but I would open it up more in the discussion among the delegates to say, what are some other ways that we can look at making sure that people are respecting the distances and respecting the school bus zones when kids are loading and unloading, you know, rather than getting into, you know, video monitoring and everything else.
I actually have a Ring video camera in my car, too. Awesome. So is everyone in favor of that with the conversation starters I have down there? Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. Resolution 7 related to MCAS. So basically, the MASC urges Massachusetts to develop a wider, more consensus-building strategy for an evaluation system of meaningful input from legitimate stakeholders, and to urge the state to launch a comprehensive evaluation to investigate the extent of biases pertaining to MCAS testing and make these results public, and also to urge Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately, and to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS tests. A lot of people don't like MCAS.
Well, but as as we have seen, we just spent 25 minutes, 30 minutes going over MCAS results. There is no other method for us to be able to see where our students are progress-wise across the state without some type of, and listen, there's some things that people don't like about MCAS. They don't like the graduation requirement. I mean, New York has had the Board of Regents exam for decades, and they don't have a graduation requirement on it. But again, I think it's still a useful evaluation tool to be able to give us an idea of where kids are relative to their peers year in and year out.
Bill, as far back as I can remember being on this committee, I know you and I have spoken about it many times, as the committee has, about, okay, we have MCAS, but no one likes MCAS, it's not good enough. When are we going to come out with a new version of MCAS? So they've come out with a new version of MCAS, and it's basically MCAS. It's a new, I don't know, it's a polite way of saying it, but, polishing something that shouldn't be polished. I don't know if you know that expression. And I think that by saying, okay, listen, we're going to stop it, it will put pressure on DESE to come up with an alternative that people can stand by. I do agree with you that, though flawed in so many different ways, it's a way of comparing ourselves to Massachusetts as a whole, which still is one of the top educators in the world.
Looking at the evolution of MCAS, going all the way back to 2009, 2010. And I should point out that if we look at the NAEP scores, the most recent round of NAEP scores, and we compare Massachusetts to where they were in the early parts of the last decade, Massachusetts has slipped considerably. Massachusetts swept the NAEP every category, every age group. All right, we're not doing that anymore. And so the one thing that I've seen, we saw this, goes all the way back to 2009, No Child Left Behind. Massachusetts was asked to join the park consortium, and they refused. The next year, the board was reconfigured, and they ended up accepting the park. And then MCAS was kind of evolved, where they had some MCAS questions and then some park questions. But the beautiful part about the MCAS is when it was truly the MCAS, it was literally put together by educators in the state of Massachusetts. And, Sandy Stotsky, who was the woman that actually, looked at she was basically the person that came up with the frameworks and came up with the ideas on how this was going to happen, and she was brilliant at doing it. I think it served a useful purpose. Unfortunately, I think through the years, it's been sort of corrupted and diluted. I'd like to see when we talked about MCAS 2.0, it wasn't MCAS 2.0, it was MCAS/Park. And, you ended up getting Pearson involved in it. I just had a discussion with a gentleman today who's a principal in a surrounding town. We had a discussion about this, and he said the problem is that it's such big money, and that money tends to influence everything that happens. Mitch Chester was the commissioner of education. It didn't take long for Pearson to hire him to head up the park consortium, and so. Looking at the idea of the MCAS, it still gives us a useful measurement tool to be able to look at our students' progress statewide and allow us to compare ourselves. And I think that still is important. I don't like the idea of a moratorium on it. I do think that the Department of Education should be putting a lot of work and a lot of effort into saying, how can we make it better? What do people don't like about it, and how do we make it better? But the idea about not having the testing, I think, is detrimental. And all this goes back to the Massachusetts Education Reform Act in '93, where it was decided that Massachusetts education was simply average, and that we needed to be better. And so a lot of the changes that came around were part of that. The MCAS was one of those things. it does create accountability for the students, it does create accountability for the educators and the districts.
I appreciate that. So do we want to say that yes on this, but we do not like the moratorium, or how about we just, why don't I just see a raise of hands of who likes the idea of a moratorium on the testing effective immediately? Well, no, I'm saying in the second part, it's two different parts, right?
You can make an amendment if we don't agree on the moratorium.
Right, that's why I'm asking.
You know, there has to be some assessment so I agree with getting rid of the moratorium. There has to be some assessment to hold the school districts accountable. I do not support or like the idea of the MCAS ever being used to hold the students accountable. And I don't like the fact that it's a graduation requirement. And, you know, we have to be assessing the school districts, holding them accountable in some way to compare them. This was very useful. You know, what we listened to today, we're looking at, okay, how can we improve this? But the MCAS is, you know, I think its global purpose really is an assessment of the school district, but far too much focus is put on the individual student right now with the results of the MCAS.
This resolution does not say to take that requirement away, if I'm correct. It just says that...
I know, there's a petition being circulated to have that.
But that's outside of the scope of this particular resolution. It just seems like we all agree on everything except for the moratorium.
So I would propose an amendment
Right.
to change a moratorium on the test to discontinue making the test a requirement. Continue the test, but no longer make it a graduation requirement.
So change the focus as opposed to the effect that it has on the student and make it more how is the district doing?
Correct.
Is that what everyone...
That's my opinion only.
Cheryl, you good?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I probably put my name on one of those petitions anymore. But I agree that testing is vital in school, and it gives everybody more information. But the MCAS is a moneymaker,
Yeah.
and I don't like it.
It didn't start out that way. It's evolved into that. What we need to do is we need to halt that evolution and get back to what the MCAS was originally designed to do, and that is to monitor students' progress and not fill people's pockets with money.
I think I'll use that exact line. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Down with Pearson.
Down. Yes. All those in
You know
favor?
how many times I've had to go into a Pearson test?
All right, and then the last one is the safe storage of firearms. And basically, it's, where's the, all right, so the permit for so this was all about having in the schools, if I'm correct on this, was having like safe, lockable firearms. But then I think what they are asking for here is that anyone who has a firearm to provide a list of expiring resolution, where's the rationale for it? Oh, I'm sorry, there you go, it's right over here, yeah. Therefore, that resolved that MC recommends for the district to urge superintendent and staff to create appropriate communication to parents and guardians that explains the importance of secure firearm storage to protect children and teens from unauthorized access of unsecure firearms and their legal obligations consistent with Massachusetts safe law storage, and to urge other communities to work with local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents and guardians of their obligations regarding the secure storage of firearms in their homes and vehicles. So I know that here at the district we have a safe for firearm, and I believe it's the shotgun, right, that it's inside there at this school, yeah, and it's a safe, right, at this school.
I've had it for years.
For years, well, I think it's only been like 4 or 5, yeah, 3 or 4 years, yeah.
And if I would go, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with you know, sort of shining a light on what we have for
It was public in the meeting, yeah.
school.
Right, but then I think that what they're asking is for the same thing in your house, that if you have a firearm, just to have
But this
it.
is asking superintendents to send out gun safety. Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah.
So we're basically
So
asking.
basically, John, how would you feel about that?
Oh, actually, I think it's actually asking
It says, therefore be it resolved, the MASC recommends all districts to urge their
appropriate
superintendent and staff to
communications,
create
yeah.
appropriate communication to parents and guardians, explains the importance of secure firearm storage to protect children.
And to work with local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate with these
So
It's
efforts.
already Massachusetts state law. If you own a gun, you have to do that.
So, right.
So
Do you wanna send
all they're asking is
communications
the
about that?
superintendents to help distribute education,
To
to
the
follow the law. But
That's all I would say. Someone else would have to craft the communication because I don't consider myself to be a gun safety expert. I really, would need
I mean,
police chief
the
or
letter,
someone.
the letter you would be saying is basically, hey guys, there's laws out there that, that dictate that you should store your gun, that you need to store your gun safely to protect children from unauthorized access. Follow the law. I mean, we could ask them to write a, we could ask them to write one to, to tell people to follow the law with regards to following a bus. This is one of those things where it's just, it's asking the superintendent to send out a communication to parents to follow what's already law.
I know, but what the thing here is that they say 1,200 children and teens die by gun suicide each year, and 80% of these children under 18 who die by firearm suicide used a gun that belonged to a family member. So, I think that's the crux.
So the problem is, and you have to understand that some people that own guns have them because they feel all the time their life is in danger, right? And so they resist keeping their gun safely locked up because, gee whiz, it might be a fraction of a second longer for me to get my gun to shoot some guy breaking into my house or whatever, and so they keep it in their bedside drawer or wherever they choose to keep it, and they, instead of not having it be loaded, they keep it loaded, round in the chamber, ready to go, hair trigger, and all that kind of stuff. And so, but there's tons of options for keeping your gun securely locked up with less than a second access. I know because people talk to me about guns enough that it shows up in my Facebook feed. These silly things, they want $30 for this or that, and opens up in like less than a second, whatever. So, there's not really an excuse to not be following the Massachusetts law. I mean, obviously, I support this because the statistics in it are correct. However, I think it would be much more valuable if the MASC embraced the mission, engaged with experts, and to help formulate media campaign materials that could then be distributed to the schools, and we could help participate in the distribution of those materials. Because John brings up a very good point. He's not a gun safety expert. I don't think any of us are gun safety experts. I only fix the holes after they're made. But an organization like the MASC could, engage gun safety experts and media campaign and make posters and PDFs and so forth that can be distributed to the school districts, and then we could help with the distribution of media campaign and to accomplish what they want, which is to get out the message and to try to encourage people.
So
Some
basically,
people you're never going to sway, but if you get
Right.
5 more people to lock up their guns, you might save one kid's life,
right,
and
or
that
5
makes it
more.
worth it.
Yeah. So basically, we want to combine both of the therefore be it resolves, right? That basically say that the MASC urge other communities to urge communities to work, or superintendents to work with local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents and guardians of their obligations regarding secure firearms in their homes and vehicles, and provide literature that the superintendent can share with the community, right? Is that more what we're looking for?
Be it resolved.
No, the first one said, the first part says that the superintendent would create, and their staff would create the message. So we're saying if we let local law enforcement create the message and the superintendent shares it out, I think that it seems to be what we're saying.
They're urging.
Okay, so we're just urging right now?
Be it resolved that the MASC commits to work with the state police to generate media materials, posters, pamphlets, emails.
And that's something we don't have to go to the state for, they
That
can
could
just do it.
be distributed to school districts to help spread the message for gun safety, lockup safety.
I really want to hear these conversations at the conference.
Yeah.
Are you coming?
All right.
And one of the, sorry, I just was going to make one more point, and that is that one of the statistics that I did not see in here was looking at the incidence of accidental shootings and the potential benefit of firearm safety education for students. If children grow up in a house with firearms, responsible firearm owners, they generally have an idea of how a firearm works. More importantly, is they have an idea of how destructive a firearm is, and knowing the difference between, you know, why a shotgun will impart so much damage and why the kinetic energy of a rifle shot will create so much more damage. You know, it's unfortunate because, you know, we see on TV, and I know, Mike, your surgery experience similar to mine. You know, you see people get shot in the shoulder. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
One of the worst places to get shot.
No.
One of the worst places to get shot. You don't have any proximal control of bleeding, you die out in seconds. All right, so getting shot in the shoulder is the worst place to get shot. But moreover is providing an opportunity for children to get, you know, students to get some education about what firearms are, what they can do, what are the 4 actions of a firearm, you know, understanding what's safe, you know, what is safe storage of a gun. You know, is it safe storage of a gun, keeping the gun in one drawer and keeping the clip in another? Is it putting a trigger lock on? Is it putting it behind a combination lock or a biometric lock? Understanding, you know, the basic principles behind firearms. How does a firearm actually work? You know, because a lot of kids, they find a loaded gun, and it, you know, unfortunately, as Mike says, I mean, there are places in this country in this state where it's not safe for them to not have a loaded gun. A child picks up a loaded gun, they don't have any education on how to use it, and it's not just a 6-year-old. We're talking teens, you know, and the next thing you know, they don't know what they're doing with the gun, safety's off, clips in, round is loaded in the chamber, and their best friend now is shot.
Maybe that's a conversation for our curriculum subcommittee.
Curriculum son, no.
There was a time. There was a time. But there was a time in this country where firearm safety was.
You're about to get trained.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was a time in this country where firearm safety was part of many school districts' curriculum. So, you know, getting to the root cause of it, I don't think there's one way to do it, but I mean, just for kids to be able to understand the destructive power of a firearm, to understand, you know, we talk about different types of guns. You know, I mean, you saw it in your residency. I saw it in mine. You know, I'd much rather get hit with a, pea shooter 22 than with a 45, and I'd sure as hell could get shot with a shotgun better than a 380.
So we have some amendments to make to the resolution of the board, and we can move forward perhaps.
I think I have enough conversation here to represent the committee. All right, so I think I'm all set.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And if anyone has anything additionally you want me to
for modulars.
Can you include that in the?
Sure, I'll just include mine. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to report there. I did reach out to the listserv of school business administrators, and almost a week ago, and I received no response whatsoever. If someone knows the name of this organization or whatever, get it to me, and I'll do more hunting. It kind of ran into a dead end on that. So. Monthly budget report, you do not have a memo because there's really nothing new to report, so you can refer to your old memos. The same issues are the same issues. I am continuing to look at electricity costs. I'm hoping next month, once we hit the 4-month mark of bills, I will give you a little bit more of a report of where I think we might end up. I'll try to do that at the 4 and then 6-month mark, and we'll continue to track things. As I said, electricity has been kind of a wild card for us, given the lighting issue and things like that have happened, some of the impacts of solar credits. So we're working through that and trying to budget a little more effectively next year for that now. The next item, student activities account addition. We have a student group that would like to do some fundraising. And they're a newly restarted group. It is the American Cancer Society Club, and they would like us to establish a new student activities account for them so they can raise funds. And that would require a vote of the school committee to do so.
May I have a motion to vote to authorize reopening the American Cancer Society Club account so that they can get the fundraising activities?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Conversation? Okay. All in favor?
It's because the green's gone.
Did you break it?
I don't know. Down there. There's 1, 2.
Did you push the button?
Yeah, the button's on.
Is anyone opposed?
Sean broke it.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Sorry.
The next item.
Testimony. Yeah, see, now I can hear it. Yeah,
Okay.
There you go. Now Lisa really broke it.
Sean did it.
Okay, I just need to keep going.
Like the clock's running.
So when I arrived at the district, the standard practice had been to approve all of the high school student activities accounts. We are now in the midst of a student activities audit, and they're letting us know that we should also do the middle school accounts. So this is just to make things right, and these are the current middle school student activities accounts that we would like to have authorized by school committee.
I make a motion to authorize the Wilbraham Middle School student activities accounts listed herein for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0.
Okay. And finally, as you know, we have put the railing out to bid a number of times now. In the last bid that we put out, we included the ability to sort of work with vendors once we had some bids in. And so we have done that. We've worked to re-engineer the potential railing additions. They actually recommended moving to 3/8 inch glass as opposed to 1/2 inch glass, right? Yeah, 1/2 inch glass, and to change from drilled sort of secures to clamps in places. And so in doing that, we have some proposals that are maybe a little bit more conducive to what we might want to do. You have 2 quotes in this packet. One is from NEL Corporation of Middleton, and one is from Campora Construction of Ludlow. The most competitive pricing is Campora's. Campora's breaks it into 3 parts. There's part 1, which is above the front entry, part 2 that's above the library, and then part 3, which is some of the stairs, the stair areas. What we would suggest that kind of comes close to maybe where we were looking at money-wise would be which are the most immediate and public areas. That would be part 1 and part 2, so that would be the front and library. That would come to $155,350. Typically, you do have, things like change orders along the way and what have you, unexpected costs. So what we would recommend is that if the school committee wished to continue to move forward with this, that they would approve parts 1 and 2 for a not to exceed amount of $165,000.
So yeah, just a quick question. So I'm looking at the quotes between the two companies. So NEL,
Yep.
cost proposal was $60,670.
Well, that was for the piece, that was for the piece that Campora has as 27,300.
Okay, they didn't bid on the other two parts.
They would do the rest at a same linear pricing. So once you break it out as a linear price,
At $13,000 per 10-foot section.
Yeah.
So I didn't do the math on that. So the math came out significantly higher.
Yeah.
It'd be another 130, roughly 130,000.
Yep.
Okay, I gotcha. And then plus another 40 at, okay.
Is there a reason why we're not doing part 3 also?
The school committee is welcome to do that as well. That would drive up the cost by another, we could call it 60,000, so we would be at, 225,000.
What was the reasoning that you decided not to include that in the recommendation?
The cost gets high, it's a less public and traveled area, less visible. The issues we've had have been in this section, so we felt like that was, again,
When you dam up a section of something, water goes to the other section. So if we were to prevent this from being an opportunity, I would think that it would definitely move to the other. So I think that compared to a lawsuit or whatever, I think that $60,000 would be short money to add.
I agree with Sean. I think if we're going to do it, it should be all or none.
Yeah.
We can talk about whether we should do it because there's a similar school that has a lower railing that doesn't have anything in place. But if we're going to do it, I think it should be all or none.
so I'm just going to say, this coupled with the capital needs assessment that we're talking about taking out, that is going to more or less wipe out the vast majority of the Minnetonka capital stabilization.
Do we have another alternative for funding?
None that I'm aware of.
This is what the town told us to use this money for, though. Town.
Our E&D is at 763,000, and we'll probably need all of that to offset the budget next year.
So, getting back to the original idea behind this, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I believe the problem that we're trying to solve is giving kids access to an open railing that they could potentially jump off of. When we get to the stairs, we're talking about putting a similar barrier up. Is there that much of a risk from them jumping from the stairs? Is there that much room? I'm looking at that.
That is something we talked about. The stairs present sort of a different sense of opportunity. You have,
because we have the stairs over on the far end of the building, those wide staircases that go up. I mean, you want to jump off of that, you certainly can. And I think there's a lot of places to go. I think the question is I think the question is whether or not whether or not it presents that much of a risk in terms of student safety. I don't know, I'd have to, I think I'd have to look at it to get a better idea of it, but.
Aaron, what was your thinking in terms of putting in the stairs?
Doing parts 1 and 2. A little bit to Bill's pointing, this is the more public area. If a student or someone is going to choose to climb up on it, for whatever reason, they're more likely to do it here. It's a more public, more open area. This is the biggest area by sort of linear space for someone to do so.
To my knowledge, we've only had one child.
2. We've had 2.
And I thought one of them jumped from the art room.
From the what?
Art room?
I'm not familiar. I thought we had 2 from the same locations, the message that I received. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't here for the first one, the second one. So.
I think I would want it as safe as possible. I would want it as safe as possible.
Okay.
But the question is, should we push to do this now and completely deplete the stabilization fund, which we could need for something that can't?
All right, let's talk about that. How would it, so we have what? 450?
450, give or take.
Right, so this is 225, and then for the other thing that we're pulling out of the stabilization fund potentially is the
35 plus 25.
Yeah, so that would bring it up to, let's say, 300. We would still have 150,000 in the stabilization fund. So that would be depleting it, but
We could put this forward as a capital request for the next round.
no, they already told us that they wanted us to take it out of the stabilization fund. They said if it's so urgent, take it out of the stabilization fund. That's what it's there for. I'm sorry, isn't that what was said at that meeting with both towns?
We had it on our capital plan, and it was rejected this past.
They told us to take it off and not present it as a capital expense and to pull it out of the miniature stabilization fund. I believe there's no one else backing me up. Is that?
I thought FinCom voted to recommend, but then there was no action because Hampton didn't vote on it at all.
I think Sean's correct. I think the last round table that we had talked about doing that, and you're right. They did say if it's that urgent and you need to get it done, take it out of stabilization to make it happen faster, to circumvent the whole process of voting for it.
I would make a motion that the school committee vote to appropriate the completion of all 3 parts of the Minnetonka Regional High School capital stabilization account.
Second. Any discussion or questions?
Question to Aaron, spending the money, like, anticipated for capital needs.
I mean, it all depends on.
No, we have a long list.
It all depends on what.
Is the stuff that we done in the next couple of years.
It all depends on what the towns.
Like, oh, the heater's broken.
So, what the towns are capital going forward, and where it sounds capital needs is. There's going to be a things that at this point hours or years in the industry to say place those at we're at 10 plus those. So as we down the pipe, there's some big costs coming up, and the question is the town are willing to board.
Are we
as I've our controller service. So a used back model so that if we can put a new one in at some point. If we don't, this is not a thing we can keep using rates. The analogy, I just saw a news report page in years ago. 7 the Army single one. It's never Wi-Fi our instructor our Chromebooks. A lot of devices are used in water.
But that cost to fix come out of the miniature station, that's going to have to come from the town, because that is what the bill is roughly.
Well, no, it's not that. I mean, these are things that we're putting on, being balked at. So I, it's all going to come from
January. Yeah, we'll have 7 going forward. Don't want to support it. Budget is anyway.
Yeah, the item that down would probably be controller, which again we cut for. Again, that's a used. It's as out of the current one. Actual Wi-Fi access points. We start some sort of cascading failure. So years replace, but older and older, right? There are 2 failures.
I would like to go on the record. I would rather every single wireless point fail in this building, jump off the stairs.
I think we're ready. So the motion, Sean, can you repeat it?
The school committee vote of all at 220 the minute. That affects that we part. Out. For the with regards to the upgrades. Yeah.
So
Aye.
anyone opposed? Okay. No motion?
It's been approved. Not part 3.
Say that for
Going forward, cabling part, keeping it on. That's my.
thank you very much.
It's only because that, no.
Subcommittee, Lisa?
We'll be meeting the 16th. We'll be having a presentation from the chair of languages at Minnesota. We will be meeting on November 6th, and we will be hearing from the languages at Minnesota.
Okay. Report. Okay, so what about
November 14th, Tuesday. November 14th, Tuesday. I have at 5:30.
so the meeting will be
An invitation from you for the.
okay. So we'll move on to operations subcommittee, Sean.
We are here and we've met.
Okay. The representative, Lisa?
Yeah.
Reach out to the union.
Whether we need to begin the process, schedule the negotiation based on. Examination. Handbook. CR. Reports. EQE of professional G retirement of supporters, G suspension of support, G community involvement making. On second policies, regional school
You get the that based on where it's covered. For example, professional staff members usually covered in Comm, so that's the explanation they get. With it, I protocol back yet. It's case. I have to take that one off for now. Community involvement in this, because it said, but I don't know. It doesn't reference specifically the. We just pull that one off for now, just to get a little bit more of the where else it's covered.
And we this is not up to me. It's just second reading. clarify. The third.
Are you okay? If a question, answer to policy.
Just put
Is Monday. Come and listen to the. Maybe, John, that's covered elsewhere.
Yep, I'll definitely look.
Thanks.
Technology support.
Nothing. However, who's up?
And, hang on, the three.
I'm gonna try to look. I mean,
I believe 6 to 7.
it's fine.
Yes.
Meeting.
Do not have time.
You want to try to do
5
5 to 6?
And 6 to 7 with the other. Mr. Chair.